Iron City built. It's time for the Steel City Nation podcast. Here's your host, Mark Maradei.
What's going on, Steel City Nation? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. This is our Thanksgiving special show. I thought I would go outside of the box a little bit. No guest, no special people coming in to talk football or hockey or anything with me. I thought I'd just bring you a show on my own. So let's get right down to it. It's almost Thanksgiving, and one of my favorite times of the year to go to a hockey game. I always went to a hockey game the night before Thanksgiving growing up, and I really miss that this year. Obviously it's not going to happen. In fact, I have not heard anything, but I've read a little bit, but I have not heard a whole lot from the NHL in terms of what they have going on. After doing such a tremendous job of finishing out that 2019-2020 season, the two bubbles, everybody going there who qualified or at least attempted to qualify, had some underachieving teams nonetheless. But, after all that stuff went down, I'm a little disappointed, to say the least, about there not being any information going on. So, let's hope that we hear more in the upcoming weeks about what's going to happen with the NHL. Although I will say this much, I did read somewhere that they're planning on kind of mixing the divisions just for this year. Maybe Pittsburgh might even be in with Tampa, Chicago, St. Louis. It was really crazy. I was hoping they'd maybe put the old Patrick division back together, but who knows how that's going to play out. We'll just wait and see what the NHL has to say about that. Baseball wise, this is usually hot stove time. It's coming up quick. Free agency. A lot of teams recently have cut loose some of their top guys. I saw Ryan Braun, Milwaukee, cut that salary loose. I have not seen him sign anywhere yet, or maybe I missed that. I don't know. But, I've been reading that because money is a little bit tighter after COVID. No, well, COVID's still going on, guys, but there's nobody in the stands. We're not pumping money into merchandise. We're not pumping money into concessions, and we're certainly not pumping money into beers. It's a little bit tighter for baseball teams, so we're going to see what happens. I know I've been reading a lot recently about depleting the minor league systems because Major League Baseball has taken over essentially the minor league baseball system, which I thought was kind of odd to begin with, but they want to go from that 160 down to 140. I'm reading where most of the teams are going to have only 4 affiliates. We'll see how that plays itself out. I know the Yankees tipped their hand, and they tipped their hand to the extent that the minor league teams that they were cutting out found out over Twitter. How is that right? Like, that's ridiculous. I wouldn't want to find out that I lost my job, my franchise, whatever, over Twitter. Call me on the phone. Stand up. Be a man or a woman or whatever. Stand up and talk about it to me. So we're going to see how that plays itself out with the minor league teams. If we even have a minor league season, who knows? A couple vaccines coming out, but I don't know how that's going to play on baseball. Baseball still has a ways to go. I just hope they gear up this hot stove season and we see some different movement. We see some different teams. Some different teams do some different things, to be honest with you. That's my hope going forward. The NBA had their draft the other night. Wasn't quite like the NFL, although they tried to spin it like the NFL. I saw some different guys being chosen. You had your normal crop of European guys going. You had your normal crop of NCAA guys moving around. But what I've seen a lot lately are some trades. One trade that absolutely blew my mind away was Jrue Holiday to Milwaukee for 2 NBA guys and 3 draft picks. I did not realize that Jrue Holiday was that good of a player to command that kind of price in a trade. Like, maybe I'm wrong. I know I'm not a big NBA guy. I watch some of it, but maybe I'm wrong. I doubt it, though. I think we're just shuffling money around again. I actually saw last night somebody cut loose. Might have been the Knicks, I think. I saw that just the other night that they cut loose like a ton of guys to get $40 million under the cap. Who knows what they're jockeying for there. And then, my thoughts on Thanksgiving, always Detroit, always Dallas, always Detroit, always Dallas, the 12:30 and the 4 o'clock game. The night game is always a little bit different teams, but I personally don't want to watch Detroit every year. I personally don't want to watch Dallas every year. Those two teams, I don't know. Dallas is up and down. I get they're America's team, whatever. Okay, I've always been a whatever guy for that, and that's not me speaking from any other standpoint of being a fan. That's me telling you I'm whatever with Dallas. Okay, if they're a great team, I want to watch them play, especially on a day like this. Detroit rarely is a great team. I don't remember the last time they had a great team. Sure, they had Barry Sanders, fantastic back, one of the top maybe 3 backs of all time, walked away early from his career, as did Kelvin Johnson. Makes you wonder a little bit, just a little bit, why those guys leave Detroit so early. Is it because they just have no idea if Detroit's ever going to be successful or not? I don't know. I like Matt Stafford. I think he's a hell of a quarterback. Adrian Peterson brings them something to the table because I feel he still has some value to offer. But, let's flex that game in some way, shape, or form. Figure out how you can flex out Detroit. Figure out how you can flex out Dallas and get a couple of different teams in there at 12:30 and a couple of different teams in there at 4 o'clock. Okay, all you traditionalists, I get it. Go ahead, send me your tweets. Go ahead, send me an email. Tell me I'm full of crap, but that's my point of view, and I'm allowed to have it. So, moving on. Let's talk Steelers-Ravens Part 2, okay? The rematch. This game, traditionally, it's always, and you all know it, it always comes down to the wire. It's a 3-point game most of the time. The first game they played, November 1st this year, spectacular. Great ending. Maybe if you're not a Ravens fan, you don't feel that way. I understand. I know I wouldn't feel that way if I was a Ravens fan, but it was a great game nonetheless. This game, it's going to be played the same. There's no question about it. You're going to see basically the same thing happen round 2 on Thanksgiving night. The Steelers' offense has been a bit stagnant, though, in that first game. It really wasn't on fire that first game. It took interceptions by Mickey the Hammer Spillane. I know it's Rob Spillane, but it took interceptions by Spillane and Highsmith to kind of catapult the Steelers forward to that victory. Made sense. Those key plays happened, but Baltimore controlled that game. They ran the ball. They gashed that defense for 265 yards. 265, people. That's a lot of yardage. For a team that was supposed to have the number 1 rush defense, that's a lot of yardage. Now, we can hang that on a couple of things, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I spoke with my friends from the Sports Podium podcast after that game, and we conclusively decided that it was that run defense that broke down, that gave Baltimore the opportunity to hang around in that game. If the Steelers cut that, boom, right in half, that pulls Baltimore out of that game, honestly. LJ Lamar Jackson, who I think is a spectacular young player, he had 65 yards rushing. He passed for 208 yards. But keep in mind that he was under 500 in his pass completions. Okay, he also threw 2 picks. He had 3 fumbles, 2 recovered by the opponent. That's a difference maker. It truly is, and you know that as a fan. It was somewhat of a breakout game for J.K. Dobbins. He was fun to watch. He cut back across that defense and gashed them pretty good. I think he went for something like 113, 115, somewhere in that ballpark. Steelers couldn't handle that. All right, but all things being equal, ladies and gentlemen, unless something happens between the Sunday that the Steelers play Jacksonville and the Thursday night Thanksgiving game, which this is being prepared for, they'll have Tyson Alualu back, who really stabilizes that middle, and they're going to have Mike Hilton back. Mike Hilton hasn't played in 4 weeks. Both those guys went out against Baltimore the first time around. Both those guys are big contributors, huge contributors to stopping the run, and they need that, okay? So we'll see how that works out. Offensively, It's bizarre how the Steelers can look so good at times, just chucking the ball all over the place. The first 4 games of the year, they were gashing teams for 100 yards on the ground, keeping them off balance. Now the Steelers aren't even really breaking 50 yards, okay, over the last few games, last 3 games. And that can be impactful down the road. But I will say this, as a football guy, if you can get the ball out of your hands quick to your bigger receivers and let them run with it, it's almost as good as handing the ball off to somebody. It is. It really is. All right. I don't know if you necessarily want to take that approach every week, but if that's what the defense is giving you, if they want to take away a run game that right now is essentially not there for the Steelers, then you roll with the punches. You get that ball out into somebody's hands, somebody like Juju, and you let him rumble up the field. Somebody like Eric Ebron, you let him rumble up the field. Okay. Um, in fact, I'm not so sure that the Steelers in that first game even did well passing. Ben was under 200 yards throwing. So we're going to see how that plays itself out going forward. All right. So although the Steelers are 9-0, they are not playing great football, but neither is the Ravens. All right. This game is, who knows? Who knows who's going to actually show up and make the play for these teams. That's what we'll find out going forward, because they got a lot of star power, in my opinion, on both sides of the ball. This series is 29-24 in favor of Pittsburgh. That's like 500 right there. Last year, the Ravens swept the Steelers. The Ravens won one of the games in overtime on a Juju fumble that led it to overtime. Okay, 2 years ago in 17, or 3 years ago in 17, the Steelers swept the Ravens. But I'm going to stick by what I said, everybody. I'm going to tell you that it's going to be a 3-point game in one way or another. I'm not going to tell you who I'm favoring. I'm just telling you that it's going to be a 3-point game. Now, some keys to the game for the Ravens: continue to run the ball. Use Ingram, use Dobbins, use Jackson. Okay, they pose a lot of problems for teams. There's no question about it. When Lamar is tasked to throw the ball, he needs to take what they give them. Mark Andrews was essentially invisible that first game. He needs to take what's available to him. If it's dumping it off to the back, if it's doing the hitches, the outs, whatever, he needs to take what's there. He gets a little gun shy under pressure, so he needs to take it. If he starts throwing incompletions, if he throws an interception or two, he's playing into the Steelers' hands. And the last thing the Ravens are going to have to do to win this game, force the Steelers to be one-dimensional by running the ball. Make them run the ball. You heard me. I told you the Steelers are not getting any ground game going. They're under 50 yards essentially the last 3 games. And they're going into Jacksonville, and it's going to be interesting how that all plays itself out against Jacksonville, because Jacksonville has actually done pretty well stopping the run. For the Steelers to win this game, they need to hold their gaps defensively. They really need to fill those gaps, unquestionably. If they're not filling those gaps, they're going to get those cutback runs again from the Ravens, and the Ravens are going to gash them for yardage. They proved it the first time, and they'll do it again. Okay? They need to wrap up tackling. They need to get their hands around the guy and stop him, not get run through. I saw that happen several times the first time they played. All right? It should help, like I said, having Alu back, at least maybe Hilton. He's still on the fence. He's practicing, but we don't know. He practiced before that. Ben should continue to use all his weapons. The Ravens can't possibly cover. Check this out. Eric Ebron, Vance McDonald, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and Connor, who can catch the ball out of the backfield. You throw McFarland in there, who can catch the ball pretty well and run with it. All right? Jalen Samuels has been asked to do virtually nothing. Maybe this is a game where he finally surfaces, because he can catch the ball and run with it in space. Let's see if he gives them any boost, all right? And finally, the Steelers, another key for them And probably the most important key is force Jackson to make more sporadic decisions with a ton of pressure. TJ Watt needs to keep coming and getting it. Bud Dupree needs to keep coming and getting it. They need to quit dropping those guys into coverage. That's unnecessary. If you're in a nickel defense and you've got Hilton in there who's great against the run support, you do not need to let those guys go out into coverage. Once in a while, I get, not all the time. Okay? I'll say this much. I believe whoever wins the special teams battle in this game was setting up good field position will win this game. I do think that will be a factor. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that one of these teams is going to return either a kickoff or a punt, and that team is going to be the one who most likely wins. All right. So that's your breakdown going into the Steelers-Ravens game on Thanksgiving night. Now, let me go forward a little bit. Best Thanksgiving games ever. Let me start with number 10. Number 10, 1994, Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, 6 touchdowns. The Colts, they laid it to Detroit, 41-9. That's number 10. Number 9, in 97, Barry Sanders went for 167 yards, 3 touchdowns. Get this, 40 yards, 25 yards, and 15 yards. He's not diving in from the 2-yard line. He's not scampering in from the 5. This guy's running it from beyond 10 yards and getting in the end zone. And if you remember Barry Sanders playing, he was spectacular, everybody, and I love that word to describe him. He was spectacular. But the Lions, they win this game, and they back into the playoffs with a 9-7 record. How ironic. It was 1997, and they were 9-7. Game number 8, O.J. Simpson, 1976, rushed for 273 yards. 273 yards. But it wasn't enough for the Bills to take down the Lions. They lost to the Lions 27-14. Detroit's key to victory was David Hill. He caught 2 touchdown passes. Can you imagine rushing for 273 yards, not being able to win a game, and only scoring 14 points? That's insane. Game number 7 in 96. One of the highest scoring affairs ever. It was between Green Bay and Detroit. It goes unsaid. 44-40 Green Bay. To me, it's crazy to think that Detroit could score 40 points. Okay? But some kind of special does happen in Detroit most of the time on Thanksgiving Day. I'm not sure what, but I still don't want to see them every year. That's me. Game number 6 in 1980, down 17-3. Chicago Bears' Vince Evans led 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns, and in overtime, a 95-yard kickoff return from David Williams led the Bears back to winning against Detroit 23-17. That's incredible, man. That's good stuff right there. Game number 5, another high-scoring affair, another overtime. Okay? It was in 1997. The Vikings edged out Danny White-led Cowboys 44-38. They won on a Darren Nelson touchdown. There's a little name from the past, right? 1987. In 2010, game number 4, the year New Orleans Saints stormed out to a 17-0 lead over the Cowboys. But Miles Austin, Marion Barber, and Tashard Choice pushed Dallas ahead, only to succumb to Drew Brees in the end. Imagine that, Drew Brees back in 2010 on an 89-yard drive, and the Saints ended up winning that game 30-27. In game number 3 for you all, happened in 1998. I call it the coin flip game. In overtime, Jerome Bettis of the Pittsburgh Steelers called tails, and referee Phil Lockett heard heads. Who hears heads? That's a noisy stadium. The guy's standing a foot away from him. Who hears heads? Okay? It's not like we're in COVID right now where you can hear everything being said across the field. So Detroit ends up getting the ball. They end up kicking a field goal and knocking the Steelers off 16-13 that year. In fact, that's Bettis' hometown. So that was a tough one for Jerome that year. 1974 comes game number 2. Cowboys and the Redskins. Cowboys and the Redskins. The Redskins ended up losing to the Cowboys 24-23. It was a throwback. It was a throwback game. It was a tough one. It was a battle. And then game number 1, we'll call this one the snow game of 1993. A lot of you might remember this. If you're a youngster, you may not. Leon Lett in the ultimate blooper, fumbling a blocked field goal attempt, and the Dolphins recover it, and they end up knocking off the Cowboys 16-14. So a final few thoughts from my Steeler crowd. As time is going along, I'm reading more and more about how the Steelers are being not given any credit. Let's just say this. All right. I hear you clamoring about Ben not being mentioned in the Sims top 10 current quarterbacks. Chase Claypool was not there as one of the top 10 rookies, according to PFF. The Steelers not even the top team as a 9-0 team in the rankings. Like, that's crazy to me, but I get it. The lists go on and on. Ben Roethlisberger said it pretty clearly and pretty simple. He said, we're not playing to be an undefeated team. It's about winning a Super Bowl. That's what it all boils down to for the Pittsburgh Steelers, getting number 7, jumping over New England, and being the team again to reckon with. Okay? So to close out the show, you guys, I have a special poem for you. This poem is entitled, "Twas the Night Before Thanksgiving." Now, 'twas the night before Thanksgiving, but I could not sleep. I tried counting backwards. I tried counting sheep. The leftovers beckoned, the dark meat and white, but I fought the temptation with all of my might. Tossing and turning with anticipation, this thought of a snack became infatuation. Hey, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. Connect with us here on the Steel City Nation podcast by checking out our website, steelcitynation2020.com. Go to our store, get yourself a nice winter beanie like the one I'm wearing. Not only does it say Steel City Nation across the front, but check out the back. It's Iron City built. Ooh, there you go, Iron City built. Get yourself a nice hoodie. We have this logo. We have that logo as well on T-shirts and hoodies. Okay. Like us on Facebook at Steel City Nation Podcast. Check us out on Twitter. Join that conversation. SCN Podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Steel City Nation Podcast. And hopefully you're watching this and you are subscribing to us on YouTube at Steel City Nation Podcast. Okay. Feel free to email us anytime with your questions, your comments at steelcitynation2020@gmail.com. I want to thank our audio engineer, Shawn Antkowiak, our video engineer, Angela Antkowiak, our voice intro that's done by Matt Noble, our intro and outro music written by Ryan Benton, our artwork for Steel City Nation, this original logo done by Joelle Miller, that one done by Mickey Stewart, and my web page manager, my store manager, Terry Maradei. Hey, join us next time on the Steel City Nation, where we are Iron City built.